I'm going to make this as quick as possible. Oh, look at here. I've got some water. Ah. I have scored trailing arbutus and 2 Pipistrella plants, and I shall show you them. First of all, I need to say that if you're going to be working with native plants in your area, transporting them, gathering them, growing them, you really need to check your local laws. In the case of these two in Michigan, you're not supposed to have them unless you have a bill of sale. I am doing this simply not for my curiosity. I'm trying to preserve the Pipistrella and this trailing arbutus. Somebody gave me 2 trailing arbutus. He bought them from a licensed shop that was able to sell them. Gave me 2. I planted them in a bad spot. After 5 years, one of them is gone, one of them is dead, and one is barely hanging on to life. You can see how pale yellow it is. In the case of the Pipistrellas, these are looking good. After transplanting them, they're doing well. The only reason that I have these 2 individuals in this planter is that their numbers are falling, they're dropping. The numbers of the Pipistrellas in this one area are dropping, and it could be a result of changing conditions, soil-wise, plant-wise, companion plant-wise. It could very well be because we're getting droughty summers year after year after year, and they need water. They need a wet, very, very organic soil to the point of being like growing in rotten wood, and their numbers are dropping. So what I'm doing, just like the Lake Huron tansy I have up there, is I am putting them in an area where they can grow, and then I can reestablish them. So I'm doing this to save these 2 plants. They're in the group Araucariaceae, the family Araucariaceae, which also includes blueberries, cranberries, rhododendrons, which includes azaleas, and you can kind of see that. You can kind of see that. I believe wintergreen is an Araucariaceae in the heath family too. You can see how wintergreeny that is. In fact, they're called umbulated wintergreens. Now, I can't put the cart before the horse. I can't just treat them like I went and I bought a geranium at the garden shop, plugging it into potting soil, which is a combination of sand and soil, you know, according to the ingredients list, which is silly because sand is part of soil, along with clay and silt and some organics and other stuff. But potting soil actually is part of this mix. I also, because I do shredded barkery, there's some here, along with a bunch of it on the trails and in the gardens, I have leftover stuff every year, just the dregs, and I pile it, I rake it into a big pile and compost it. So I've got composted wood in the form of composted shredded bark. I also have peat moss. Peat moss is just from peaty bogs, and then it's just like ground up, I'm assuming, maybe compost a little bit. Acidic. It's a very acidic part of a soil profile. And I combined these 2 and created a spongy kind of soil horizon that is fertile. If you look up the growing conditions of this group, these plants, it says grows in a highly acidic, unfertile soil. I don't buy it. I take exception with them saying infertile. If it's infertile, plants wouldn't grow in it. In some ways, sand can be a soil too. In the case of pitcher thistle, Sericium pitcheri, it needs pure sand to grow in. So somewhere in there, there's a fertility rate. I think they should call it a different fertility and not a non-fertility. I have little companion spongy things in there, moss, that acts quite a bit like that soil. This sphagnum, this type of sphagnum, is a sponge just like the soil that I created. And that'll keep it damp, you know, retain water just like perlite in the potting soil. And so in order to promote the growth of these plants and to make them happy, I really had to think soils. this is why I like doing this so much. In all my little microhabitats, I have different soil types. I like building a soil and then sometimes thinking, what kind of plants can I plug in there? Or in this case, I have these plants, what kind of soil do they require? What kind of water content in the soils do they require? How much sun or shade, you know, it's kind of the same thing, do they require? And in that way, I stand the best chance of keeping these guys alive. Somewhat metaphorical for our lives too. We have goals to have these plants, but in order to achieve those goals, you have to build your soil. You have to build your foundation. You have to correctly put together the conditions in order to achieve your goals. I was going to try to be clever and connected with that favorite saying of mine, that Cheyenne saying, beware of the man who does not speak. Beware of the man or the dog that does not bark. But really, I can't come up with a good connection. But somewhere along the line, there is a connection to that proverb. I don't know. I'm going to think about it. With that, I better get to work. I better hop on Black Lightning, my beach cruiser, and go down to the beach and see if people are like tearing stuff up. August can be a funny time. I've run into so many interesting people, horticulturalists. The lead horticulturalist, tripping over my words, for a prison in South Dakota. And this guy was interesting. I gave him some sweetgrass because he mentioned that he had a Seneca, member of the Seneca tribe that was in South Dakota, which is kind of interesting to me because the Senecas are part of the Iroquois Confederation, which is on the East Coast. Anyway, this guy deserved a sweetgrass present because he said the Seneca man said that him and the other natives wanted to have a sweat lodge, but the prison wouldn't let him have the materials to build one. It was a minimum security place, so the dude said, hop in my truck. And they went off campus without permission and gathered willow, which allowed the native people in the system to build their sweat lodge. And I thought, you know, that dude is okay because he went with what was right before really what could get him into trouble. He was a warrior. He deserved sweetgrass. Anyway, time to go to work. Hope you got something out of this. Not only is it fun to grow plants, and in this case important to grow these plants, it's also fun and interesting and important to understand soils, soil science. If somebody was to ask me if I was a botanist, I would say, well, by practice, not by training really, but I have had soil science, so I've got a grasp on this stuff, the foundation, the root of growing these plants.